took up writing as a retirement hobby. At first I wrote only in prose, but around 4 or 5 years ago I decided to try poetry and discovered that I enjoyed doing it tremendously, and really I've concentrated on poetry since then. I did it primarily for my own pleasure, and I have derived enormous satisfaction and pleasure from the actual writing of it. I had no intention of having it published initially, and I was persuaded by members of the Johnston Writers Group to coordinate my poems together and make them into poetry trails around Loch Winnoch. And that idea did very much appeal to me because most of my poems are inspired by place, this very beautiful countryside around where I live. As I say, I personally have got enormous pleasure from writing my poetry, and if you also can get just a little pleasure from it too, that would give me great satisfaction. I think most of us would agree that Old Simon is our best loved village landmark. I remember when I was teaching full-time a good number of years ago now, I used to take my primary 7th class down to the graveyard there to sketch and to take tomb rubbings. And I was always particularly drawn to one gravestone, and this was for Mary Caldwell of Lochside. Apparently, on a November evening in the year 1767, Mary was due to attend a ball in Loch Winnoch. It was a fearful night of storm, and the River Calder was in flood. Her party came on horseback, and as they were crossing the flimsy Loch Bridge into the village, Mary's horse stumbled and she was thrown into the water and swept away before the very eyes of her mother and her brother and her fiancé, who were all unable to save her. When her body was recovered, she was brought to Old Simon graveyard to be buried, and my poem is based on that incident. It's called Silver Slip. At the ancient village graveyard, in a blow Old Simon's pleugh, when the wind has the sough o' a haunting in the deep black hair to the yew, and the trees witch fingers pointing high accuse the storm-dreeped moon, and the arms o' branches sway their blackness under the glowing gloom. A pair bit slip o' a lassie, a glint wi' a ghastly licht, glides white and soft as a barn hoolet in the hedgerows o' the nicht. It doesna say in her gravestone if her skin was white as milk, but oh, I wot that she was braw as a white rose under the birk. It doesna say there were fresh flowers tied into her braided hair, or that the shilpit crater was graceful like and fair. But I wot that she was lichtsome as a white doe on the green, wi' a shimmer o' brightness about her, a pale star, a sheen. Lasses are anca bonny when they are but 19. Gurley ran the Calder burn wi' a banshee moan soond. A wolf howled in the storm winds. Rain streaks whipped the ground. The very air was a maelstrom on the nicht that she was drowned. but she rode towards Lochwinnoch as gentle as a dove. Her heart was blithe with gladness, she would dance to her true love. The Calder River came charging down in a swoop of pitiless grey. Its floods raised up their wet, wet arms and carried her away. Oh, the greeting and the wailing in the heart of the ewe. A lover wept his sair sought tears for waesomeness and rue. When there's whispering in the branches, wind souchens frae above, the silvery slip o' a lassie dances for her sad lost love. She glides like a lonesome hullet, a glint wi' a pearled licht, soft fingered as a moonbeam touch in the hedgerows o' the night. In the year 1488, King James IV of Scotland elevated Sir John Semple of Elliston and Lochwinnoch into the dignity of Lord Semple. In gratitude to God and to the King for his friendship and honour, Lord John built a collegiate kirk and endowed it for a provost, 6 chaplains, a sacristan, and 2 singing boys. The life of that first Lord John Semple ended tragically. He followed his king to battle against the English, and in the year 1513 died alongside him on Flodden Field. A tragic end to a life that had been in the main joyful and triumphant. He's buried in the collegiate church. This poem is about the 2 singing boys. It was actually written for 2 singing boys who took part in a Christmas nativity show that was performed by the Sunday school in Calder Church in Lochwinnoch village. And the 2 singing boys were very good singers and sang Jubilate and then spoke the poem very beautifully. And I do reckon that long ago the real singing boys might well have sung God's praise for the beauty of the loch and the surroundings. The poem's called Winter Song of the Singing Boys at the Collegiate Church. Thank you, God, for the sounds of winter, for the quiet lapping of water on the shore of our Semple Loch, and the swans swooping down in it from the purple dawn, out of the storm clouds of the northern sea, and the call of geese escaping the raging ocean on their vast flying V. Thank you for rooks cawing to each other in the metal sky, and the wind's soft sigh in the high bare branches of the straight oak tree, and the rustle and the chuckle of holly leaves when the wind tickles through them and moves them and shakes their scarlet berries like little glowing beacons so that the thrushes see and come on a rush of whirring wings to eat them. Thank you for the sweetness of a robin's chirping and the sad grey of a rainy day, and the squeal of happy laughter after a child feels the thrill of slipping and sliding and gliding on hard-packed snow. Thank you for the puffing and the blowing of warm breaths of air into chill fingers and the crickle-crackle of breaking ice. Thank you for the sound of church bells ringing and choir boys singing about the birth of Christ. The McKellars came to Muirshiel Glen in the early 1920s to be sheep farmers. My husband was only 3 at the time and he's nearly 78 now, so you can imagine the changes in farming and in land usage in his lifetime here. We have a photograph of him, aged about 14 at the time, I think, when he was ploughing with the horse below West Tandlemere. And I think this photograph was taken by a Mr. Stevenson who lived on John's Hill at the time. And Quentin was always very fond of it. One Christmas I took it to Alan Aitchison, the photographer, to have it enlarged. And I wrote a poem about it, and the two were matched, the poem and the photograph were matched together and framed. And he liked it as a Christmas present much better than the usual pullovers and shirts that I tend to give him. The poem's called A Word of Praise. Twa muckle horse were keepit on the ferm lang syne, afore the time o' the grey Ferguson. Great strang craters that moved together wi' a slow motion rhythm, all grace and harmony. They were gey wise, kent fine who to gang gentle like atween the chains, and answer to the rain while the farmer steadied the plough. The furrows that churned ower were stracht lines, like the streeched warp thread on a full length o' border tweed, brune wi' grey pooks o' stain. Paddy and Billy. A photograph was ta'en of them, so we can glimpse them as they were, ye black, ye white, age misted. But for this, the beasts would have vanished in the nicht o'er forgetting. Naebody ploughs o'er high, thin groon these days. It's no worth the effort, for all that their willing hearts yens pooed and wrastled and gied their awe at just a word of praise for the betterment o' it. When we came to live at Convith in the early 1970s, I noticed that there wasn't a snowdrop or a daffodil to be seen. And because I love both these flowers, I planted a few bulbs of both daffodils and snowdrops at that time. Recently, I wrote poems about both daffodils and snowdrops, but I reckon that I don't quite compare with Wordsworth in the daffodil line, so today I'll read you the poem I wrote about snowdrops. A glacier of flowers is drifting down the drive at the Conveth. I collaborated with the earth to get it going, knowing that it might become a whiteness, a delicate stream of lightness among the bare trees of March. From a paltry planting at the hill's crown, the springlet of snow spilled over, feeling its way down, imperceptibly moving, frothing and creaming and creeping, reaching out pale-petalled fingers over the brownness of the ground, sliding around the wine-satined bark of the wild cherry gean, slipping its tendrils between the beech and the rowan and the larch. 20 years since I knelt and felt warmness inside the earth and listened to the pulsing of the heart of it, touched the blooming on the skin of it, injected life seed into the core of it, set in motion my river of flower snow. It's growing and growing, flowing past my time. I rather look on myself as a nature poet. I never stop being grateful for living in such a wonderful and beautiful area. And the bird life in Renfrewshire is a great source of inspiration to me as a poet. I've written all sorts of poems about buzzards and curlews and kestrels and wrens and skylarks. All of them that I see I seem to write about. But I'd like to read two about the barn owl and the blackcock, because they are both quite endangered at this present time, and they're both still to be seen in our Muirshiel Glen. I look on the poem about the barn owl as my white poem, and the poem about the blackcock as my black poem. So here they are. Barn owl. She glides in silent flight on silver wings, lady of moon shimmerings, white, a glimmer with pearl light, her veils of chiffon grey trailing the hedgerows of receding day. Indeterminate wraith, wisp of a whisper, hiding in purple shade, huntress flying fast, sliding down moonbeam shafts to plunge in the pools of dark. Silver bowls shiver and dart for their black holes as the lady in white quivers above them on the airs of night. Phosphorescent ghost, quiet as a dream, floating and drifting on hedge moon glistered to a rippled stream. Come dawn, she lays herself to rest on morning's arm, and is borne softly to the cavern of our Conveth barn. Sleep quiet, princess of the night. We hold our breaths and watch for you with hushed delight. And then nature's warlocks. Your hame is the emptiness o' moor lake. A whistle o' wind soughins through heather and reed grass maks music for ye. Haunt and airs that gar ye dance your stately rondo, dance of the blackcock lords to the blackcock gods. Your nature's warlocks, dark and secret as the old day fairy folk. Your all primeval force and magical shadow melt. Your mystery, you're the black Celt. This poem is about the burning of witches. It's based on two separate Renfrewshire witch legends concerning the burning of 7 witches in Paisley in the year 1697, after they'd been accused of witchcraft and convicted, accused by Christian Shaw of Bargaran. Apparently, during the burning, the leg of one of the witches fell outside the fire, and one of the spectators took his stick and eased it back in, which is a fairly horrendous thing to think about. The other legend concerns a boy called Robert Semple, who lived at Beltrees, one branch of the famous Lochwinnoch Semple family settled there. Robert Semple was only 10 at the time of this witch burning, and he was determined to go and see it. His parents were aghast at the very thought and said he was too young to witness such a gruesome event, but he was so determined that they actually confiscated his shoes so that he wouldn't walk there. But he managed to escape them, and he actually walked barefoot from his aunt's house in Pollock to Paisley to see this witch burning. Apparently it had a bad effect on him because he remembered it throughout all of his life. Right in the middle of the junction of Paisley's George Street and Maxwelton Street, there's the impression of a horse's shoe, and this marks the spot where the 7 witches were burnt in the year 1697. The poem is called Tree in the Sweet, Damp Cool. After the burning, on the road back hame frae Paisley, the laddie honnelled the reeking stick gingerly atween his thumb and finger. It felt hot, but his heart was cold inside him as a pool o' glass green frae what he'd seen. He took the stick to dull shadow in the wild wood groon ahint the cabbage patch, looked at it through a lang breath, then thrust it deep into the earth a blow rank grass, with purple fox-gloved spears to guard it in the sweet, damp cool. And frae the charcoal wound in the rune shaft o't, a branch grew like a slender arm, with tender twiglet fingers street-shewed. And always in the spring, the curling yellow catkins of the hazel would hang frae it, and shake and toss in the soft air, like gowden ringlets o' a lassie's hair. And the laddie's een would stare at the hazel tree. But there was nought to see, for she wadna come till him in the sun's light. Yet she was there, ahint the edge o' thought, and whiles, wafted on the dark airs o' his sleep, she'd slip in till him in the nicht, on the mirk cloud o' a nightmare, yellow hair, wind drifted abin her head, fire-lustered een, fear-stricken, looking straight at him, slim flames licking around the arm reached out towards him like a prayer. The witch, he daurna be touched, but it was aye the same. Time and again he'd ward her aff him with his hazel cane, and the shock o' her finger on it would trimmel along the wand to bond him to her in an agony o' licht, afore he lurched back frae her until the blackness out o' her sight. When the man awakened, he had mind of red fire heat, and he would greet. Anyone who lives in Renfrewshire is bound to be aware of Misty Law. When you actually live in Muirshiel Glen, Misty Law seems to be looking down on you from everywhere. I couldn't help but write a poem about it. Long ago I actually climbed it, and this poem takes me back to the days of my youth. It's called Centre Pin. When I was young and the sun shone in my sky, I climbed the hill of Stake and the Misty Law. I remember that I saw the paps of Jura lolling in the seas beside Kintyre. Further down was Ayr and a secret fairy island, Ailsa Craig, my Ballyhigh, in Galloway and Kirkcudbrightshire. Lanark was there, turned to blueness in the faraway air, and I was seeing block graphs of buildings and triangular spires in a conglomerate of towns by Paisley. This was being. I was an eagle flyer, soaring on the top of Renfrewshire. Centre pin in the round of earth and sea? Me. And back to base. I took a tumble down the hill face of the years, and the wise eagle knows its place. At the beginning of the year 1999, Paisley Museum ran a competition for the year of reading, and I was lucky enough to win it with a poem in Scots written about the weaving industry in general and the Paisley pattern in particular. This poem was printed in postcard form, and the postcards were left lying in various Renfrewshire libraries and museums for people just to pick up and read. And something rather exciting happened. It was picked up by a person who obviously must have liked it, because it was sent to Sally Beamish, the well-known composer, and she has set the words to music, and it's to be included in a Millennium Song which will be performed in Glasgow and Edinburgh in February in the year 2000. The poem's called Cramasie Threid, or Crimson Thread if you prefer it in English. Teardrop frae a Himalayan pool, stappit foo o intertwining fronds o fern, and totty floors and dots o dew, all glinted with the bright day glow o Cramasie and rose and indigo. The story Threid comes streechin' frae the mountains o Kashmir, until the Paisley bloodstream like a vein flowing with Cramasie as rich as Isle or Rose, to print the jewel tear on the Paisley heart. Set up your loom with harp-string thread, tune your warp and weave your weaver sands. Waft in Abdallah for the Indias, sing o Victoria, or wrap it woon in silks and softest wool. Let the shuttle go, fleeing back and for it like a weaver bird to the nest. Macnib's music, the Cramasie and indigo and rose for the Paisley jewel.